With the latest Salmon Run trailer, we finally have enough basic info to know how every single one of the brand new Splatoon 3 specials works. Of course, specific frame data and numbers are missing, but as a core design, we know pretty much what they're trying to go with here. So I'm gonna go over all of them, and just how good I think they are, both design-wise and if the specials themselves look strong. Oh, and if you enjoy this, I'm gonna be predicting the rest of Splatoon 3 specials in a video coming out this same week. So stay tuned for that, and let's get started. I'm gonna start with my personal favorite design-wise, the crab tank. Its ball form, we know a good bit of how it works because it seems to basically just be Baller. In fact, we even can see it climbing walls where it only goes straight up, just like how Baller does. The second main feature is its firing mode. When you walk around, you're able to shoot, which has two functions. You have one fast firing mode that seems to kill pretty quickly still, though it does require a bit of shots, and has a fair bit of range. Secondly, you have a bigger explosion shot that can kill people if you hit a direct or do substantial damage with an indirect. The most important detail about the special that I really think is genius though, is that whenever you fire, you stick out on the top of it and are completely vulnerable. As I'll talk about more with this video, I think the biggest problem with Splatoon special design in either game is a lack of counterplay and back and forth, and having it so if you're shooting at someone, you're really vulnerable is just a genius idea, especially for a mech like that, which could easily just be an HP bar to run through that would feel incredibly unfair. The multiple firing modes remind me of Ultra Stamp's different swinging modes, but I think it's a bit more realized here. Both forms seem to have their use, one being better for long distance poke and the other better for killing or hitting behind walls. So you have reasons to use both, and taking advantage of both the main and sub-weapon buttons as we've seen in the new trailer means it'll be really easy to control both of these firing modes. As for things we don't know that I want to see, I think that A, the crab tank should have a long startup animation so it can't be panicked, and B, the crab tank itself needs to have HP. It should definitely be more than Baller, but it shouldn't be too much to where it can't be broken. I'm thinking somewhere similar to Booyah Bomb would work fine here. This special is both great in terms of design, it gives plenty of options while leaving a lot of counterplay, but I also think it's really good as a special. The mobility you have, potential HP, and multiple modes of firing means I can't really see a situation where this wouldn't be somewhat useful. And there's also clearly a lot of room for optimization, so I think players can get pretty damn good with this special. This one's just honestly a 10 out of 10 in both design and how good I think it is. I really love it. For another aggressive special we know a little bit less about, the Trizooka, obviously being a modified version of the Splatoon 1 Inkzooka. In that game, it had a giant tornado that reached E-liter range and one shot. It was incredibly good at pressuring people at long distance, and if you had good aim, you could even clutch up fights in close quarters combat. Main difference in Splatoon 3 is easily the shots. It's a burst of 3 blasts that do still seem to do substantial damage, especially with direct hits, but it probably won't be as fast or have as much range as a tornado, though at least you get a nice arc that can make it easier to hit people over ledges. The biggest difference easily though is the number of shots. Splatoon 1 Inkzooka barely gave you enough for 6 shots, while we know Trizooka for a fact can only fire 3 times. This is honestly a really interesting limitation. Duration is usually the main thing for a lot of specials, and I think it still will be here, but I could see them giving Trizooka more duration since you have less shots. Honestly, I think this is really smart, because Zooka's shots should be incredibly powerful, but having a ton of them just makes it way too good. You have to get rid of either how strong the shots are or how many you have, and giving people less of them I think is a smarter decision. As for things we don't technically know, I'm assuming the Trizooka will have the same type of startup lag and be fairly slow. The Splatoon 1 Inkzooka had this, and there's no real reason for them to change it. It leaves the special user with a fair bit of vulnerability, especially at close range, which is really important to its design. While a bit simpler to Crab Tank, I still really like this. The idea of having really precise but powerful shots is really cool, and I think the Inkzooka as a whole was still a fairly solid design that was just a little bit too broken. So a toned back version that has you being more careful works pretty well. How good is this special? I'm not sure. I think it's gonna depend a bit on the duration. If it's still really short, then it might be pretty easy to wait out the 3 shots or to count them off. But if they have a good bit of time to aim and get those off, then I think it could put a lot more pressure. Regardless though, I don't see it being a bad special, just one that'll be a bit hard to use if you're a beginner. Alright, so 2 for 2 on good design. Let's talk about the special that everyone was worried about. Big Bubbler. Now I'll be honest, this is the special we know the least about. It has some deployment time as we can see from the trailer, but we don't know how long it lasts, and we don't know how the HP works. However, I'm gonna go out and say it, I think it's completely fine and that this special design is really smart. Here's why. The amount of value you get from this special is entirely based on where you're standing. Whether you're a supportive player or a frontline player, you want to try to put it out somewhere to control enemy territory. Getting as far up as possible is the more value you get. If you use it from pretty far back, it's not really going to do too much. Unless if you're a backline and you're trying to defend yourself, maybe it can help you there, but that would be pretty situational. Splatoon 2's Ink Armor and Tenta missiles are global specials, which not only makes them kind of boring to use, since there's not really a lot of input, I guess missiles does it a little bit better, but the other major problem with it is it doesn't really teach you good positioning, which is why you have Neo-Splooshes in solo who throw by painting their entire spawn. I did a whole video on why exactly this is bad, by the way. These specials are not only bland, kind of break the game by ruining slower weapons, but even more importantly, they build really bad habits for support players, and I think Big Bubbler fixes this. Having the special be completely tied to where you're standing means you gotta be positioning well for this, and it comes with a good bit of risk. The further you go, the more likely you are to die, but the more value that Bubbler shield is gonna get. So basically, I think there's a good bit of a risk-reward value, and because it's just a shield instead of an HP special chain to the rest of your team, I don't think it breaks a lot of weapons like Ink Armor does. Anyway though, on the aspects we don't know, I'm still not that concerned about it. Like yeah, maybe the HP might be tuned poorly, but as we've seen with Booyah Bomb and Baller, it's really easy to adjust HP. So even if the shield does protect too much, I think it's really easy for them to just fix it later. The one thing I am hoping for is what exactly happens when the shield is damaged. There's some people thinking the top could be a vulnerability point, which I just don't think is going to happen. This would make some weapons like Chargers really good against it, and some weapons like Dapples have no chance against it. What I think they should do is as the bubble shield takes damage, it would shrink. This would mean that smaller amounts of damage still have an impact on it. Also, while we're at it, like with the original Splatoon 1 Bubbler, it should basically be immune to bombs. Bombs would be really good against it, and I think having main weapons be better is great. Also, we just need more counters to bombs in general. Basically, what I'm trying to say with this, while the numbers might need some tweaking, the core design of this special looks really smart, and the real only thing I'm concerned about is how exactly damage affects the bubble shield. It's hard to say how good this will be without knowing the exact HP, but I mean, a shield that can tank for a good bit will have its uses, especially on maps with really important choke points that are hard to maintain. Going from the special everyone was more worried about to the special I was the most worried about, Killer Wail 5.1. The first trailer and description just had me thinking, oh god. This is Stingray and Tenta missiles combined. It's locking onto multiple people, it's tracking them, this is horrible. But I maintained faith for one reason. The special is still named Killer Wail, and that's one of the best designed specials of all time. And thank God the Salmon trailer finally showed us how this thing worked, because man, I am incredibly relieved. Basically, it should have been pretty obvious, I guess, but Killer Wail 5.1 functions pretty much like Killer Wail. The OG Wail basically had you aim a giant cannon, and then it had a bit of a launch time, and then there would be a beam that would obliterate people for a few seconds. And well, it turns out Killer Wail 5.1's launch is incredibly similar. There's this giant radius. I guess it's not technically a ring, but you know, a radius that you get to aim and pick to fire. So the whales take their little bit of time to fire. Once they do, you get control of your main weapon, but instead of targeting people just anywhere on the map, they only target people inside that ring. Because of this, how you use the whale is incredibly similar to Splatoon 1, in which it's dependent on the timing of when you use it so people can capitalize on it, where you're standing for the angle, and where exactly you're aiming it, which is perfect and exactly what made Killer Wail, the original one, such a great special. And 3, it's easy to counterplay it. You just move out of the way. It's honestly even easier than normal Wail. I totally get how they wanted to do this special now. Original Wail could still kind of get cheesy kills because you don't really get to react to it once it's up. If you super jump in or accidentally swim into it, you're dead. Don't worry. Oh no! The way this would work though is once you got into that area, you would get targeted by the beam and would have to move out of it. I think it'll be really easy to avoid dying to this special. Onto the things we don't know about, I guess. I would really like if the whales could be destroyed. Having them be vulnerable with a little bit of HP could be a really nice touch. I'm also still curious on the duration. I'm gonna guess that it'll last a little bit longer than normal whale, but probably not as long as Stingray. I think around 4 to 5 seconds would be fair, but we'll have to see. The main question for me though is, does damage stack if you have 6 whales on you? Since we know if there's not enough people in that ring, rather than being on up to 3 targets, it could just lock onto 1 or split onto 2 people. I'm really curious how that will work. I just hope it doesn't do too much damage if there's only 1 target in the area. This one could end up being the weakest of the 5 specials, but honestly I think it still has some valuable use, and I just really love that it's similar to OG Whale. So good job once again. And finally, this leaves us with the simplest special, and probably the fan favorite for most people, Zipcaster. This special is just honestly pretty simple. You get to go across the map. We don't really understand its range, but it seems like you're still vulnerable. You do a little wall jump that paints the wall and might do a small amount of damage, and you have full access to your main weapon, while your sub-weapon is probably replaced with the whole Zipcast thing. The most interesting part about it is it's not duration-based. Again, it could still have a timer like Trizooka, but you recall when your ink tank runs out. The Zipcast probably use your ink tank, or maybe you lose your ink tank after a long duration has passed, but we can see from the trailer that if you shoot your main weapon and your ink tank runs out, you'll recall. Oh, and of course the recall is a thing. It seems to be exactly the same as Inkjet's recall, which is great. It's a nice downside to the special and a way to punish it. I don't have much to say about this special because unlike a lot of the other aggressive specials, this isn't a transformation one. You still basically just get the same access to your main weapon that you do normally. You just get this extra Zipcast ability to go across the stage for a bit. I think that's really smart. It's nice to see more of an enabler special rather than a strict transformative one, and it definitely seems to have its fair share of counterplay since, you know, there's no armor there, you can just shoot the guy Zipcast thing. Plus, I mean, who doesn't enjoy grapple hooks? It's so hard to make that thing not fun. So, I mean, yeah, I'm a fan of Zipcaster. I think everyone's a fan of Zipcaster, and it seems like it'll be fairly strong. You'll just have to be careful at higher skill brackets if people track you and try to punish you when you do that little wall jump. So, unlike my special design series I've done for both games, I'm not really going to give a rating here because, you know, we are still missing specific data and a lot of info about the game in general, but man, when you really think about it, these specials look amazing. There's a lot of reasons to look forward to Splatoon 3, but honestly, this has been my #1 from the very start. I don't think either Splatoon game really handled specials perfectly, but it seems like these are just so smartly handled, both in counterplay, what they do, the amount of value they get. Everything just seems like they really thought about it, and that makes me incredibly happy. Of course, this is only 5 specials. We probably are missing like a good half of them, and maybe things could change or be ruined, but I'm gonna have faith. This just looks so good, and I want to believe that they'll do this right. So that's my analysis. Stay tuned because I'm going to be predicting the remaining specials, both returning and new, and what exactly they should change with them. Let me know your guys' thoughts below, and I'll see you all in another video.